So my strength can be a weakness, and I had to work on that personally, and I'm better at it now. But so what you're describing is your visionary, your energy, your charisma could actually become a weakness if you don't pay attention to it and find ways to actually get the right behaviors. And you've been learning to do them to create the space, but that was something you had to work on, and it makes you a stronger executive as a result.
Yeah, that's really well said. I need to start listening to all of your podcasts.
Welcome to the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for leaders who are looking to drive value from investments in their customer experience and culture together. I'm excited to talk today to Adam Temple, one of the leaders at Bixly, a really innovative company that provides support for technology with fractional executives. Adam, thanks for joining us today.
Of course, you bet.
Adam, just to get started, do you want to share a little bit more about yourself and Bixly and how you got started there and what mission you guys are on?
Yeah, we started Bixly in 2008, so it's been some 15 years. I've been the CEO most of that time. I brought on employees pretty quickly, and we grew to multi-million-dollar within just over 2 years. And that was largely software development and mobile app development. And then we just recently, with all of our experience, decided to evolve into also offering fractional CTO. And that's kind of this new buzzword right now, because you kind of always think of a accountant as fractional or a lawyer as fractional, because you don't want to, for smaller companies, they don't want to hire an in-house lawyer. They probably just want someone in a law firm. And you just want a fraction of their time, and you need the time when you need it, and you don't need it when you don't need it. And with fractional CTO, that's what we offer. So people that are not able to afford a full-time CTO, which is expensive and a competitive market, they just sign up for the hours that they need. So there's the Bixly thumbnail.
This is the gig economy being applied to enterprise leadership. The fact that you can get stuff when you need it, and you can leverage other people's technology, other people's experience. Not everything has to be inside your four walls in the gig economy. I guess just to continue with that, how have you seen technology and the role of technology changing? And what types of issues do you get plugged in most to help solve?
The role of technology changing. When we first started in 2008, it was quite a few frisky product startups. We helped Twitch TV turn into Twitch TV. We had a small part to play. I wouldn't try to brag and say we were a huge part of what they did, but there was a lot of space to be filled out still in 2008. Now the market's kind of filled out. There's just so much variety in the products and SaaS companies that are operated. So now we're seeing a lot of internal tools being built to optimize everyone's operations. And then what was the other part of the question?
Oh, just, if you have to think about how this applies in the customer experience realm, this is the CX and culture connection. What do you see as some of the most important technologies that are being worked on that touch customer experience today?
Yeah, actually, that's kind of a favorite area of ours when people are thinking about CX intimately with the product planning. What the CTO does is combine the efforts of different team members in a way that fits with the technology and fits with the CX, fits with the executive needs, fits with the customer needs, fits with the budget. So they're really there acting as mediator between all of those needs. And when any one of those things that I mentioned is missing, you can have, for example, a product that works really well in one sense, but maybe it just doesn't smooth out all the interactions between the departments, or that makes the customer journey bumpy because they just can't find simple things, or they don't get notified at the right time. So For us, when we see someone designing purposefully that customer journey, the CX path, it's just makes our job so much more satisfying, because by the time we deliver the solution, everyone is happier. It's kind of funny when we might do like a whole lot of programming in the background. Maybe it takes months, but right when the user interface goes up and we connect a couple simple things and people get the feel for it, then we're congratulated as though we are the victors, even though the hard work has like taken months. And just actually doing the correct connection work, thoughtful usage of information with good timing, then we're the victors. So it's kind of a funny thing that you're not quite appreciated for all the hard stuff. It's like,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like the unveil and the all the work that goes into going on a trip, and then you go on the trip, and everyone thinks about the moment of arrival and seeing the sights, but there's a lot of work that went into planning the trip, the journey. Um, the two thoughts, Adam. One is that what you're talking about is the intersection actually of the employee experience and the customer experience to some extent. And the other is that the company's on a journey also. I'm going to come back to each of those in turn. For the employee CX experience you're talking about is, while you're working on customer experience, the employees give input to that. So like they're actually part of the design process. They're part of building a website or an app or e-commerce experience or content marketing experience, things that are powered by technology now. And the employees need to be part of that. And the process that you go through of designing it and them giving input is actually emotionally either good or bad for those employees on the journey. And some of those moments in the journey are actually moments you can celebrate. And just like you think about the customer journey having peaks and valleys, your internal journey as a company also has peaks and valleys. And technology can be a drag, or it can actually be something very positive when it makes it easier or more innovative.
yeah, I like that. I like the way that you put that together for me, because we have a question on one of the areas of our scorecards, the way we kind of help everyone understand where their tech is. And one of them is, do you have a path for engineers to have input into the product? Meaning, is it ticketed? Is it talked about? Is it tracked? Because the engineers, so that's one sector of employees that I'm just bringing up. They have input that's very important, and it doesn't really line up with the same input that you're going to get from everyone else. But if they don't feel heard, and if they're not heard, you just suffer in the long run big time, because their input is extremely important, although it's the geek input. Well, that geek input really matters at a certain point if the product is not reliable, or, if it's too slow, something like that.
What you're highlighting is the people contributing to the work on the quote product are employees or external people, if they're fractionals or consultants or freelancers. And you actually want, in an innovative culture, openness to ideas. You want to listen to new ideas. You want to create space for people to have ideas and share them. A really good agile process, is about defining what done looks like, working in sprints, and making sure everyone's ideas are heard and acted upon in a very iterative, tight way. And what you're highlighting is the ability to make sure you listen to your employees and get that valuable input. And we could talk about training and upskilling and the right skills to contribute, but engineers have ideally they are able to contribute their expertise in a way that gets listened to and makes it into the product.
Yeah. And the rest of the employees are just as important in their own way. Each department has something to say, and it takes, a product owner, product manager, CTO, all these roles, sometimes, quite a few different people, depending on how large the product is, to make sure that it's all heard, like you're saying, because you can't take everyone's input. That's too many cooks in the kitchen. But you can start prioritizing the energy of what they're saying, because it's not that they're wrong per se. Maybe some employee says you need to put the widget on the left, but the engineers want it on the right. The execs don't want it on the page. Well, that's an important topic. And as long as they get to feel heard, they're going to be more involved. As long as you show them that their concept that they're bringing is important, they're going to be more involved. And that even though maybe it's not put in the way they want, there's a reason for it. And please keep bringing your great ideas. That's big.
I think another important thing here is the, and again, this is the CX and culture connection, is the building the behaviors and the skills and the relationships and the mindsets. Those are the 4 building blocks of good culture. Working on those 4 building blocks in a way that you get the most out of everyone contributing. And so to take an example, the engineers have a certain way of looking at the world. They have a certain set of skills and ways, and ideally they understand design thinking and they understand agility, and they're able to work together on the UX and UI of the product in a meaningful way. Ideally, those engineers also are exposed to new ways of thinking about like how to spot improvement opportunities in the experience. They have a good vocabulary to work on that, but they need to be able to work with others in the organization. And so that collaboration of getting everyone to work together, where, like you said, the different departments are working for a common purpose on a product, or I think of it as an experience that goes beyond the physical product, beyond the service, and you're creating a deeper emotional connection through what you're, that's ultimately what a solution is it creates meaning in the customer's life or value to the customer beyond the narrow functional benefits of your product. And so really all about bringing the people together and building a broader movement than just the engineers and getting everyone to work together.
I loved hearing about when Procter & Gamble was doing the cross-functional teams. I was so inspired by that I just remember wanting to always do that, wanting to always have large enough company where I can do that. And our company is not too large. And we value input from everyone, but I was so inspired when the mechanic would be there and you just have like their teams, I felt like consisted of, 8 departments and they're all working on laundry soap, even though, someone specializes in engineering or physics or something that seems unrelated.
Mm-hmm. You're bringing different talents, different skill sets together. I love this concept of range, that you're trying to build employees who have a range of skills. They're multilingual, so to speak. They may have a first language, but they're able to collaborate, and not everyone has the same range of skills. But by broadening the range of your people and encouraging a culture where they collaborate, you get more value, and it's more meaningful to the employees too.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I have a question for you. Do you have specific tools when people are in groups to help them have more cohesion? Maybe phrases to say and not to say, even something simple as that.
Yeah, I think I like to think of there being cornerstone disciplines that you're teaching in the organization for skills and behaviors. Like we've been talking about agility, human-centered design, quality management, data science, change management. There's a set of skills you can learn in those disciplines. Just like Intuit rolled out Design for Delight and got hundreds of people to go through design thinking, and other companies, pick other disciplines they focus on, and they're upskilling and engaging their people in conversations and how to apply these things and how to work on them. That creates a common vocabulary and way of looking at things that people can collaborate more effectively. And ideally, you translate this to the specific behaviors you want in the culture, not just the skills and learning, but what are the actual behaviors you want people to. That's why Agile, I think, is so popular, because it's a set of rituals and behaviors. And if you don't take it literally that you have to be, a startup to do exactly all these rituals every day, it actually shifts the behavior and the mindsets and skills in the organization. And I think that's important. I think the other thing is to get people to practice learning to see the customer experience. I actually think of experience, my mom's an artist, like a collage. and you're constantly putting pieces down, right? And you learn to see how the pieces fit together, right? And that actually is a way of looking at the world. And what you want to do is people to be able to take their skills and their experience and talk about what they're seeing. So spotting improvements in the experience, like you said, when the engineers spot something and they see it, they should be able to share it and act on it and collaborate, because there's certain shared practices and skills that are adopted in the organization.
I keep working on my skill for making space as a leader in different areas. And I feel like, even just like a sprint planning or some other part of Agile, or just meetings that have value, I, as a hothead kind of, I started the company as 27. Before that, I had a startup at 20. Yeah, about 20. And I would come in as a hothead and I would really dominate the conversation and kind of force everyone through my magnanimous charisma, which wasn't that, to go my way. And now I'm seeing the value of creating the safe space for everybody. Safe as in emotionally, you feel heard, you feel valued. And then you start to get much more depth, especially, I have to make space for the quiet people in the company just to make sure that they're heard. And it really is, I would say, infectious, as I'm starting to make more space for everyone. They're starting to make space for everyone else. And then you have meetings with input that's more nuanced.
It's really powerful what you're highlighting, which is self-awareness as an individual and then as a company, to extend that further, about what are the behaviors you want. Because behavior is the most important thing in culture, I believe. And I've kind of grown up in a way of thinking at the Katzenbach Center at PwC, where I used to work, that of the 4 drivers of culture, behaviors, skill sets, mindsets, and relationship networks, behaviors is actually most important to pay attention to, because you can act your way into new mindsets, commitment, consistency theory. It's very hard to change. People dig in on their mindsets. You can change their mindsets. You can have fantastic visionary leadership and great words and great oratory rhetoric. But if you don't shift the behavior, it doesn't last. And it doesn't get root and doesn't get adopted. So if you're trying to build a movement, leadership's about modeling behavior. And so having that and telling stories is powerful if it reinforces the behaviors and gets adoption of the behaviors. So what you're highlighting also is like this, your strengths become your weakness paradigm, Adam. So and I to make this personal, like my strength is I can see where the ideas are going and I can think like a chess player a few moves ahead. But I have to force myself to listen and slow down and listen more in the conversation, because I want to listen to the emotion and the human being and not just the content. So my strength can be a weakness, and I had to work on that personally, and I'm better at it now. But so what you're describing as your visionary, your energy, your charisma could actually become a weakness if you don't pay attention to it and find ways to actually get the right behaviors. And you've been learning to do them to create the space, but that was something you had to work on, and it makes you a stronger executive as a result.
Yeah, that's really well said. I need to start listening to all of your podcasts.
Well, they're always there for you, and I'm really glad to have you as one of them, and to be collaborating more with you. It's been fun getting to know you and your team. Let's shift gears for a minute to technology and AI, which is red hot right now. What types of issues do you see as most relevant and getting the most attention today in AI? And maybe follow up would be, what's not getting enough attention?
I think what's not getting enough attention, I guess I'll answer that backwards, is doing simple integrations with ChatGPT and just seeing what happens. They have APIs that are available. It's quite easy to tie in existing software if you are able to understand what AI is good at, and then find an area of your customer journey or somewhere inside your software that's easy to plug in. I feel like that's underutilized. You don't need fancy consultants. You can just hire a small firm or have your developers try it internally on a test basis and just see how it goes. What I'm seeing kind of being blown up is some of the unicorns, or I should just say there's just so many startups right now that are one and two man companies, and they're very interesting, but what we'll see happen is after they release some feature, for training your own data easily or whatnot, then it just kind of, if it's good enough, if it's important enough feature for the community, then Microsoft just puts it into ChatGPT or OpenAI, and then you have access to it. So I don't care too much about the excitement with all the new companies because so many are going to fail. It's the nature of where we're at in the stage of the market. I'm not too excited with the just tracking that trend. I am really interested to see the LLMs get more powerful. There's quite a few that are open source that are competitive with.
Those are the large language models for the audience who doesn't know what an LLM is. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, sorry, I have to switch off a little bit. I'm used to geek talk all day. And the LLMs are the things that have been developed for quite a few years, and they've gotten to the point this year where they're really exciting, and they can start rewriting our papers and summarizing things and pulling data from disparate parts of the internet, putting data together in fascinating ways. So the trends that I care most about telling people about are what is the lowest hanging fruit that AI can currently help you with. Let's talk about that. It's not probably something that's core to your business, but it's probably something that is easy to try, and if it fails, it's not a big deal. It's a cheap implementation.
Just to build on this point for a minute, a few years ago, AI has been here for 30 plus years. Right? I worked with someone in the past who had multiple patents in AI, and his first patent was like 30 years ago. So this has been around a while. It's just gone through cycles. With the growth of e-commerce and with personalization and a lot of new short form social media with next best content, AI was being adopted left and right, but largely for personalization. And then there were also use cases around kind of simplification and automation and removing work that were getting a lot of attention. And now but a few years ago, a lot of this was in the low code space. So to put, kind of think about where did technology intersect customer experience and employee experience? There was a lot of effort on low code where to make this accessible for the the folks who don't speak tech as a first, second, or third language, to use that bi-trilingual metaphor I used a moment ago. Because tech's not my first language. I started in marketing, but I worked a lot at the marketing tech intersection. So I speak tech and analytics as a second language, right? And I enjoy collaborating with people who are deep in the tech and always working with people with diverse skills. So low code was all about like what you see is what you get, drag and drop, object-oriented programming. It made it much simpler to create experiences where you could understand how to snap stuff together and create new experiences much faster, and you can create prototypes very quickly. Like Salesforce is the number one low-code platform. It's very simple to develop on. And it's not the only one, of course. What's happening with AI now, I believe, is that we're able to dramatically simplify and improve the experience, where so much of it now is actually either interrogating the AI to do it for you. You're basically riding on someone else's rails in the experience. Or you're like designing and curating an AI experience and embedding in something else that is dramatically simplifying, but it's taking low code's promise to the next level. How do you see it?
I can definitely see that sometime soon. I haven't seen it where it's obvious it's a major win. I think of tools like WeWeb and Retool that are low code tools for building user interfaces. You're supposed to have your own backend. When we get to a point where the backend can kind of just, with human language, be built, then we're going to see like this 10x spike in productivity with development, and my company will have to change. Huge amount of tech will in the world. I suspect we'll get there, but I don't know. Cannot tell what's going to happen. The low code tools, I still, we've used that for doing prototypes for clients. It's just something really quick and dirty. They have an immediate limitation. I shouldn't say immediate. It's after, you need a little bit more features than the tool can handle. So for AI to interact with that, I haven't seen that happen in a meaningful way yet, but maybe you have with Salesforce. I don't work in Salesforce.
Well, I think right now they're a little separate. And I think you make a good point. The low code is being used largely for rapid prototyping, developing kind of good enough interfaces on the front end. So you build on top of platforms like SAP and Salesforce, Adobe, or others, and it makes it easier for people to create an experience with less customization and development and less time to get to a finished product. You still have to do a lot of work on the back end to clean up the data, to get the APIs to work, to get the everything to hum. I like to think of like a red, yellow, green model, Adam, where green is stuff that's out of the box. So when you design a customer experience and you kind of do the what ifs and like if then statements, if we did this, then this would be the impact. You're dreaming. You're unconstrained. Then reality sets in, like how much of this can we actually do, right? And you could do a green, yellow, red, where green is it's out of the box, which often means that someone's either done it before or it's very easy to plug in with a low code interface. And that's one of the things that like Salesforce is really good at is that you can set it up fairly quickly once you learn how to work with it. And you can actually create use cases on top of it for customer and employee experience that are using its functionality. And that's good enough, right? Yellow is something where you either need to do a light amount of back-end integration or data cleanup or some process changes or workarounds, or you work with a broken back-end for a little while. It takes human labor, but you're willing to do that and wait for things to catch up, and you want to get out there faster. And red is like, man, this is hard. Like, we're not going to do this now. Let's wait. Let's fix the plumbing first, and don't try that until it's ready. And there's always some trade-offs between green, yellow, red and an agile. And it's like a bit of multimodal. Like some things are agile and some things are slow and hardened, and you're not going to put everything at risk. So if it's a red, don't screw around. Make sure you get it right.
I really like that language. I will adopt that. Yeah, I'm sure with your clients and your enterprise environments, they're used to having multiple projects, and that seems really useful for quickly categorizing, at least through one lens, where that project is.
Yeah, I had one client where they'd been working with, I won't name names, a large firm, wasn't ours, on like blueprinting all of their technology. And they had people fanning out over the company, blueprinting all of the requirements gathering. And they came back with a list of like 300 initiatives they wanted to go do. And they had them laid out in a roadmap, and it was going to cost $500 million to implement. Okay. And then we went through it. And because the kind of chief operating officer wanted another look. But we took a customer experience lens. And we said, which of these initiatives is actually most important to deliver value to the customer and to us because we see a path to monetize that customer experience. And that could be revenue or cost. It could be it reduces call center volume. It reduces the cost of quality, or we drive retention, we drive pricing, things like that. And we actually applied this green, yellow, red lens. So first we said which of them are, two filters. First, which of them are mapped to customer experience or not. And then second, green, yellow, red, which of these should we sort? So it's like first, which ones matter more than others? And second, how would we sequence them? And don't do the red stuff. Like don't try to do all the red things at once. 80% of the initiatives were deprioritized. Right? So they were able to get going. Some they never did. Some they just sequenced differently. And then in parallel to like this prioritization effort, we also looked at how do we evolve the culture so the way we work on the initiatives changes, which is actually the force multiplier. I personally find if you do the prioritization without looking at the culture, you actually are leaving half or more of the value on the table. The initiatives may actually fail if you don't, the expression culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Oh, nice.
Which, by the way, Peter Drucker didn't actually say. People quote him, and I for years have been saying Peter Drucker said that, and it's a common trap. But I'm writing a book right now, which has come out in about a few weeks, also called CX and Culture Connection. And when I was quoting that, and I did my research to footnote it, I realized that he's misquoted. He actually said, culture is hard to change and singularly persistent. So it's a very dense, like academic way of phrasing the same thing, which is culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's a much better way of saying what he actually said. So people misquote him all the time, so I don't feel so bad.
I got to get that book. I'm really liking what I'm hearing. We don't think of things too often in the enterprise scope, because if we're working with a large enterprise, we're working with a department within them, and they've already figured out what they want to do. So scoping just one project is kind of our lens for that. And then a lot of startups or companies under $10 million. So they just have 1-2 pieces of technology. So the language that you're bringing in is really interesting, because I haven't had to encode projects with those 3 different labels, which sound extremely appropriate. But I like that language, and maybe that'll fit into some of my client interactions too. So thank you.
I'd be happy to give you some copies of the book to hand out if it's helpful, and have conversations. I personally, one thing I'm really enjoying, Adam, having left the big consulting firm, I like to joke I'm a recovering consultant, right? Is working with earlier stage companies. I got some exposure to that with clients that were like private companies that worked with the other parts of the company, or they were private equity owned. But to really get back to the emerging company space versus the private equity owned companies or private businesses, the big consulting firms don't really work with them that much. Right. And I've always enjoyed interactions across all sizes of companies, actually helping the big companies behave more like startups. That's been how I got into culture, is a lot of digital. When I worked on digital transformation when the internet was fairly new and kind of grew up to lead that practice in retail consumer, it was all about helping the larger companies behave like the startup, which is really hard to do in a big company. It's very hard. They get in their own way. The startups have a different challenge. As they grow, they want to be able to take it to the next level without losing what makes them them, and without actually their strengths becoming their weakness. They want to grow in the right way. And that's something that I've been enjoying getting more involved in, is how to work on culture and CX for a company that's going from 50 to 500 or from 500 to 5,000, not from 50,000 people. And how do we all work together better now?
I've been really inspired by the companies that keep it small and are extremely profitable, like Basecamp, MailChimp, Nutshell. We've been using Nutshell CRM. And, Basecamp has extreme profitability per employee. They used to be at under 100 employees, and their numbers were high, hundreds of millions. I'm forgetting what it was, but they have the option to hire much more, expand the company, and they haven't. And they have, from what I understand, a really special culture, and they've even rewritten their product multiple times. They've been leaders of a technology called Ruby on Rails. And that to me is inspiring, because it is possible to compete with someone like Asana in the project management space with a very small company and do a really great job. They're specific, and they have a culture that works for them. So I don't know if you've looked into companies like that versus the companies that keep growing, have a much higher headcount, lower profitability per capita.
I'll take it in a slightly different direction, Adam. I want to think some more about what you said about, like, is there a a choice to make about about growth and about, your purpose and what you're trying to achieve and your impact. What I often see, though, is the larger companies trying to preserve some of the nimbleness of the small phenomena. So what you end up with is like a company like a 3M wants to get into white space innovation. I bring them up as an example because they're constantly creating new lines of businesses that leverage their technologies for, coatings for, adhesive and abrasives. That's basically, they have a core set of technology, and they have like constantly changing set of businesses where they'll launch a new business and reward people for becoming like a general manager who grows a business and driving innovation, revenue that didn't exist 3 years ago. And that becomes a new operating unit, right? And then over time, if you look back 5-10 years, like half the operating units didn't exist 10 years ago. So they're very dynamic. Some of the bigger companies dig in, they have turf, it's always been done this way, and they don't change and allow things to evolve with this. I think startups are much more fluid. They're willing to pivot. They're willing to try new things. They're willing to abandon things. It's very hard for big companies to fund innovation and to operate in a way that like new things are created and tried quickly. They tend to buy innovation by buying companies.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. The efficiency of experimenting is not very high. So it's hard from the accountants, the CFO, to approve that type of thing, or the COO, when they don't quite have an appreciation for it, because really they have kind of the wet blanket sometimes, and they can easily squash that if it's not built in, if there's not a process for innovation like 3M has.
So, one last question I'll have, it's been a lot of fun, is a lot of times you hear about like the CMO, CIO or CMO, CTO partnership as being critical to the success of a business. Particularly, I find in customer experience, so much of it is tech enabled that you need that partnership to work well. You're working in a fractional environment where you're the new guy in a company often. How do you make that partnership work coming in from the outside? Any lessons learned about how a new CTO or fractional can help be a catalyst for culture evolution in a company?
Yeah, I mean, my approach is to have empathy for everyone involved, and that creates an environment, dare I say, where you can actually love each other a bit more than just a little bit of cold business. You're able to have understanding, and it creates a very quick bond of trust if you show them that you got your back. If I walk into a situation and there's politics, or I should say there's always politics, but if they're heavy politics, then we either have to change things really quickly or just not work with that client. So if I'm able to come in with empathy and there's no bad politics, I feel like integration is just very quick for us and our team, because we have a language of trust that we use with everyone. So we're trying not to overpromise. We're trying not to aggrandize our own position. So that's part of our tool set, and just coming with the experience of having, done all those poorly. A lot of our CTOs, they're 15 years experience and above. So they've had the hothead experience coming in with the ego first. And in fact, one of our CTOs wrote Death by Ego. And he's 40-year experienced. So those are the things that I think of immediately. Additionally, what comes to mind is having a good system for tracking everything. Because when the executives sometimes are looking for someone to blame, the new guy gets the brunt, and you can just show them through your logs and your own planning why we're not going that direction, why we're late on this project because we had to replace it with this new one that came in. So just having a really great set of records that everyone can look at the same view on. That's important, because if everyone's looking at a different view of the tasks, then we don't have convergence.
That's fantastic. If people want to learn more about Bixly and your company, what's the best way for them to connect with you and others at your company to kind of do that?
Bixly.com. So that's Bixly. And you can set up a Calendly link, and we'll be happy to talk through. We can help people understand where their tech is and where their team is with a scorecard assessment, which is a really fun way. It's 8 different lenses that we look through over 3 different stages of the company, depending on where you're at. And we'd be happy to talk through that with anyone that's interested and maybe help them out by moving their tech forward too.
Thanks, Adam. It's been great chatting. I'm looking forward to more of these conversations, and thanks for sharing your experience with the audience. And I'm sure that you spark some great ideas for people.
All right. You're welcome.